Hey everyone, quick little announcement before the show. I was on another podcast called For the Love of History last week where we talked about the Oneida cult, and it's an insane story, and also you probably are connected to it more than you think you are. So head on over to For the Love of History to check that out, and if you are checking this podcast out because you came over from that show, well, hi, how's it going? Sorry in advance for just all of this. And if you're the kind of person who appreciates a good trigger warning, just go ahead and just use this as a blanket warning, because there's, you never know what you're going to encounter on this show. So if you've been here for a while, thanks for coming back. Love you. Appreciate you. If you're new here, hi. And I don't know. That's it. Here's this week's episode.
Our Weird World.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week it is the 5th edition of our Weird Fun Bag series. Got 3 stories. We are looking at the story of Roofman, the story of the cocaine bear, and the Tree of Ténéré, which we will get into right now. We are starting with the story of the Tree of Ténéré. I think that's how you pronounce it. There's that little accent over each of the 3 E's in this word. And I looked up how to pronounce it, and one version was just like Ténéré, which fine, that's great. I can do that. That's what I went with. But then there was another pronunciation that pronounced the E in a different way every single time. It was like Ténéré or something like crazy. It's not important. I know you don't care. Anyway, this was a tree. It was an acacia tree in the African country of Niger. Is it Niger or is it Niger? I don't know, man. Who cares? Now, look, here's the thing. There are countless numbers of these acacia trees all over Africa and Australia, and they look exactly like what you would imagine an African tree out in the savannah to look like, right? It's it's just a single trunk, and their limbs kind of fan out into this wide umbrella of thin leaves, just like pretty much like the trees that you saw in The Lion King. That's what these were. That's what these acacia trees were. But what made the Tree of Ténéré so special was that it was just all by itself out in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And I mean, all by itself, right? The next closest tree, which was another acacia tree named the Arbre Perdu, was over 250 miles away, right? That's how isolated this one tree was. No other trees for 250 miles in any direction. So it's out in this flat desert, and it's this one tree, all right? So it was special, all right? Well, when a well was dug a few feet from this tree in 1938, the people who were digging the well found that the roots of this Tree of Ténéré stretched all the way to the actual water table 118 feet below the surface, right? Now, the tree itself, above the surface, the element of the tree that you could see was actually pretty small. From its trunk, the wood extended kind of diagonally upward, and then it kind of split into 2 large branches, and then kind of, from there kind of split off a little bit more, and had a pretty healthy canopy of leaves, but it was probably only maybe 20 feet tall. And then its roots 118 feet down. And again, all alone out in the middle of the desert, right? No trees for 250 miles. However, in 1973, and this is why this story is here, a drunk Algerian truck driver ran over the tree. All right. And I feel like I can't properly express how insane that is, right? This tree, there's literally nothing else capable of being run over for hundreds of miles in any direction, but this one dude out in a truck in the middle of nowhere found a way to run over it. Literally could have just turned the steering wheel just a little bit in either direction and he would have missed it. And somehow this dude hits the tree, knocks it over, kills it. Right. And many people, when they heard about it, they mourned the death of this tree because it had become really a significant landmark and something of a sacred site for the tribal people in the area. On November 8th, 1973, a group of people uprooted the dead tree of Ténéré and moved it to the Niger National Museum in the country's capital of Niamey. The tree's remains were placed inside a blue and brown painted pavilion. I assume it's still there today. Back out in the desert, where the tree used to be, supporters erected a metal sculpture in the shape of a tree at the site where the Tree of Ténéré had been murdered in hopes that it would stand out more so the next drunk driver would make an attempt to swerve out of its way. So, otherwise, again, it's a story of a tree. It's not that important, but just the fact that this one tree was just out in the middle of nowhere and someone found a way to hit it and run over it accidentally is just mind-blowing to me. Our next story here is of Andrew C. Thornton, who was born on October 30th, 1944, to a couple of parents who owned a successful horse farm near Lexington, Kentucky. Thornton grew up in private school, and he was a member of the Iroquois Polo Club, so he was kind of all hoity-toity, as much as hoity-toity as you can get in Kentucky, I guess. After spending time in the Army as a paratrooper, Andrew went on to become a narcotics officer and a lawyer, which is crazy because usually those two sides are against each other. However, being on the right side of justice was just a little too boring, so Thornton became one of the leaders in this drug smuggling ring called the Company. In 1981, he was one of 25 men arrested in Fresno, California, as part of a conspiracy to steal weapons from the China Lake Naval Weapons Center and smuggle 1,000 pounds of marijuana into the United States. He pleaded not guilty to those charges and then ran off to North Carolina, where he was quickly rearrested. In exchange for dropping the felony charges against him, Andrew pleaded no contest to the drug charge, and he was given a 6-month prison sentence. Now, unsurprisingly, this did not stop him from continuing to try to smuggle drugs once he got out of prison. On September 11th, 1985, Andrew jumped into his Cessna 404 in Blairsville, Georgia, which is, in North Georgia, in the mountains of North Georgia. He had just dropped off a shipment of cocaine from Colombia and was headed, I don't know where he was going. He was headed north somewhere. But for whatever reason, Andrew, once he got up to cruising altitude, he put his plane on autopilot, grabbed his parachute, and jumped out. The problem, however, was that the parachute got stuck in its pack, and he never deployed it, and he ended up splattering himself on the driveway of Fred Myers in Knoxville, Tennessee. Myers found Andrew wearing night vision goggles, a bulletproof vest, and Gucci shoes. It's insane. He also found an Army duffel bag with 88 pounds of cocaine valued at $15 million. Additionally, authorities recovered $4,500 in cash, 6 gold South African coins, and 2 guns. Now, why is that important? It's not really. This is what's important about this story. 3 months later, forest rangers near Hayesville, North Carolina, which is roughly 100 miles south of Knoxville, found a dead black bear. Now, that's not super uncommon. There are a lot of bears out in the woods in the Great Smoky Mountains. It's not super uncommon to find a dead bear every now and then. However, Andrew's plane had also ended up crashing near Hayesville. Because remember, he was on autopilot. I guess, the plane kind of kept circling whatever route he had it on, runs out of fuel, crashes near Hayesville. And when it crashed, this black bear found the wreckage and also found another bag full of cocaine. And as bears do when they find anything remotely edible, this bear ate all of the cocaine, all of it. I don't know how much it was. They couldn't figure it out, but it was a ton of cocaine. And so obviously the bear died from a cocaine overdose. Once they figured it out, the bear was actually stuffed. It passed through several owners where it is now currently on display at a general store in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, this story, just that premise alone, was adapted into this highly fictionized and exaggerated movie called Cocaine Bear, which released, I think, earlier this year. I think it, by the time this episode airs, it will have come out already. Yes. Yeah, it came out in late February. So, this is the story. If you saw Cocaine Bear, I'm sure it wasn't a great movie. It had Ray Liotta in it before he died, but that was just the premise. Like the rest of the story in that movie, completely fictionalized, but this is the inspiration for that movie. Not as exciting though as the movie probably. All right. Our last story here is of Jeffrey Manchester, who was a former Army reservist who turned thief. And kind of actually, if you look at his mugshot, he kind of looks like a young Woody Harrelson from White Men Can't Jump. But anyway, he earned the nickname Roofman after he drilled holes into the roofs of fast food restaurants like he was this low-rent Mission Impossible Tom Cruise character during this crime spree that he went on from San Francisco to Massachusetts at the end of the 90s. Roofman was finally captured in 2000 and was actually sentenced to 45 years in prison at the Brown Creek Correctional Institution in Polkton, North Carolina. And for the next 4 years, like, Roofman was like a model citizen in prison. Like, he worked in several different areas. He earned the trust of his guards. He eventually used that trust to become the first person to escape that prison by holding on to the underside of a delivery truck. Now, I still don't understand, because I've seen this before where maybe they get into a garbage truck or it's a delivery truck, whatever it is, how anyone lets prisoners that close to something that goes in and out of prison gates so easily is incomprehensible, but it happened. And Roofman just escaped, and he went over, to Charlotte, which is nearby, probably like an hour away from this prison, and just started a new life. For the next 6 months, he began to identify himself as John. Is this my story? No, it's not. And he kind of fancied himself as like this devout, kind-hearted Christian who had a secret government job. And here's the thing, guys. If you meet anyone who tells you that they kind of have this secret government job that they can't really talk about, just go ahead and assume that they're either a fugitive or a serial killer. Because, I don't know, I feel like the government would tell its, agents to come up with a better story than that, right? Like, tell them you work in, cybersecurity, or that you work in IT, or that you work in something that you kind of have some sort of other framework for so you can have a conversation. But don't tell them you have a secret government job that you can't talk about. Come on. It's amateur. All right. He actively volunteered with Crossroads Presbyterian Church and donated all kinds of toys every year to their toy drive. He even found himself a girlfriend because, women like a dangerous man who has a secret job, and he's so, whatever. I don't know. The only problem with Roofman's newfound charitable nature was that he obtained these toys for the toy drives that he donated to and volunteered at by stealing them from Toys R Us locations all over the city. Here's the thing. Can you guess how he broke in? If you think that he drilled a hole into the roof of Toys R Us and rappelled his way down, you're actually wrong. All right. He was not about that life anymore. All right. He had done that for years by doing, drilling into fast food restaurants through the roof and getting in that way. He was better than that now, you guys. Instead, he moved on to actually mimic the 2000 movie Where the Heart Is, which I'm sure we've all seen that, right? Where Natalie Portman lives in a Walmart, and I don't know. I honestly didn't see it, but I know that that's what she does in that movie. Because here's the thing. Not only was Roofman actively robbing Toys R Us, he was living there as well. He didn't have an actual house, right? He would spend time with his girlfriend, sure, but then he would go home. And like, I don't know how you keep that charade up. I don't know how you, as the girlfriend, don't just eventually be like, hey, seriously though, let me see your house. It can't be that bad. And then you just keep coming up with excuses and you stay with him. Ladies, have more self-esteem than that. So that's the thing, is like Roofman didn't even have to break into the store. He would just walk into the Toys R Us every evening and hide behind the bicycle display until the store closed, because like he knew minimum wage employees didn't care enough to make sure that anyone was left in the store at closing time, and also knew that they didn't care enough to realize that the same guy was walking into their store every night. And like, I don't know, I guess there were no security cameras. No one picked up on this because he did it for months. After the store was closed, all the lights were out, Roofman would go around and he would eat stolen baby food. And he would actually, like, because he wasn't like a big enough prick to begin with, he would actually break into the manager's office and manipulate employee work schedules, which is like, what's the point, right? Like, those people didn't ever do anything to him. These are just like, a lot of them are probably just like high school kids, college kids, who are just trying to make a little bit of money. And dude just goes in after they've probably already seen their schedule and then just changes it. And then that just makes them mad at their manager. The manager's like, I don't know what happened. It's funny. It's funny to me. But Roofman wasn't done, because, he has plans here, right? So when the store would become too crowded during the holiday season, Roofman literally tunneled his way into the adjacent store, which had been an abandoned Circuit City. All right. So, which I don't know why he didn't just do that to begin with, but I don't know. Maybe it was too obvious. Maybe he couldn't. I don't know where his tunnel to Circuit City was, but maybe it was just in a place where he couldn't easily get to it while the store was open. But inside his Circuit City house, he set up a cubicle complete with like posters, action figures, a basketball hoop, and even a baby monitor to keep an eye on what was going on next door. And he steals all of this from Toys R Us and just takes it next door, sets it all up. And now he's got like this whole network of things so that he can keep track of, like, are the store employees onto him? Absolutely not. But he's just got this whole setup. So on the day after Christmas in 2004, Roofman went to a nearby pawn shop and stole a gun, which that's impressive, right? He then returned to his Toys R Us, which were full of people returning all kinds of like unwanted Christmas gifts, and actually attempted a takeover style robbery of the entire store. 2 employees escaped and alerted authorities, who found Roofman's little setup next door in the Circuit City and started, from there piecing together his true identity. Somehow during this whole thing, Roofman escaped from the Toys R Us, even though he tried to like rob everybody. He escapes. And over the next week, he completely eluded police. Like, I don't know what Charlotte police were up to and how bad they were at this. But like during that time, he actually went to a nearby dentist's office and got his teeth cleaned, because look, guys, hygiene's important. Even if you are a wanted fugitive, it's very important to take care of yourself. And Roofman knew this. And so he went and got his teeth cleaned. However, shortly after his cleaning, Roofman realized that his dentist office would likely have access to his dental records, which would then uncover his true identity and soon send the police after him. And he realized his mistake. So what does he do? He responds the only way he knows how, completely irrationally. He went back to the dentist's office and just sets the entire building on fire. It's amazing that all of this happened, right? Especially like in the city where I live. Like, I just can't imagine some guy just terrorizing this entire city. The next day, after, the building had been set on fire, police actually completed their investigation. They figured out who Roofman was. And when investigators told Roofman's girlfriend that her boyfriend was actually an escaped convict wanted for theft and arson and wasn't actually this ruggedly handsome secret government agent, she was absolutely shocked. She could not believe it because a guy lying to a girl about who he really was has absolutely never happened before. Surely not, right? However, police convinced her to work with them, and so they got her to lure Roofman back to her house one last time to celebrate her birthday. And probably, she's like, come celebrate my birthday and then you can give me my birthday present later, wink, wink. Or maybe I'll give you a present, whatever it is. I don't know. So Roofman was like, yeah, I'm gonna get laid. And then he arrives at her house and he's immediately apprehended, thus ending the career of another crafty, elusive, wannabe supervillain. As far as I know, he is still in prison serving his sentence unless he somehow escapes again. All right, the 5th edition of the Weird Fun Bag is in the books. A shorter episode, a little bit this week, but honestly, whatever, man. It's a free show. I'm not getting paid to do this. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that, and all the other episodes have been like 45 minutes or something crazy like that. So whatever. Not that you care, but whatever. Let's wrap this week's episode up and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, the Tree of Ténéré was the only tree anywhere for 250 miles, and someone found a way to run over it on accident, which is just amazing to me. Number 2, the movie Cocaine Bear is highly fictionalized. Like the only factual element of that movie is that a bear died with a cocaine overdose. Nothing else about that movie is real, and I'm sorry to disappoint you if you thought it was. Number 3, Roofman was Charlotte's kind of supervillain, but I don't know, not really. Whatever. He stole from Toys R Us, lived there, and then tried to take everything over, and it didn't work out for him. And so he is now still, as far as I know, still in prison. Next week on Our Weird World, we are looking at some unlucky lottery winners, right? Now look, there's all kinds of stories how someone wins this giant jackpot and then they blow all their money and they're back to being poor again or whatever. This is like that, but way, way, way worse. So 3 stories next week, looking at the stories of Bud Post, Jack Whitaker, and Anthony Amato. Next time you start dreaming about winning the lottery, you'll have to remember these 3 stories and maybe reconsider, just working hard. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird. Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock all my doors. It's the only way to live in cars. Here in my car, I can only receive. I can listen to you. It keeps me stable for days in cars. Here in my car, where the image breaks down, will you visit me, please, if I open my door in cars? Here in my car, I know I've started to think about leaving tonight, although nothing seems right in cars.